This is the second video in a series pointing out all the slanderous lies and misrepresentations found in the Amazon docuseries Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets, in chronological order as they appeared in the program.
Now, porn star Danika Dillon details her alleged sex with Josh Duggar.
Though it was consensual, it more or less felt like I was being raped.
She had sex with Duggar while his wife was pregnant. He had paid her thousands to remain quiet.
This is one of the most blatant examples of how the Shiny Happy People producers used things that they knew were false to advance the agenda of slandering Christians in every possible way. This woman tried to sue Josh Duggar and had to drop her suit and admit she was lying and had never met Josh Duggar at all. Yet this fact is completely left out of the Shiny Happy People docuseries. They just show this lying woman giving her false testimony and leave it at that because it furthers their goals. Truth makes no difference whatsoever to them. The information about this woman and her false claims is in another video on this channel, which you can find in the description below.
His teachings became the means with which he exerted control over his followers.
You will not find one time where Bill Gothard or the IBLP organization ever even hinted in any way that they were exerting power or control over any family, church, or individual who attended their events, nor did they ever suggest that families or individuals allow that kind of control. Shiny Happy People creates this narrative and pushes this propaganda over and over again throughout the series without showing any evidence of this supposed control. But look at this next clip. Here, Brooke even adds Bill Gothard into the position of authority over pastors, fathers, and churches and families.
The kids obey the parents obey the pastor obeys Bill Gothard, and I guess Bill Gothard talks to God himself.
The teaching she is referring to is what IBLP called the umbrella of protection. This is just a flat-out lie. There is no teaching in IBLP that fathers are to obey pastors and pastors are to obey Gothard. But of course, to fit the false narrative here, they had to add in that Gothard comes between fathers and pastors and God himself. It's just another slanderous lying piece of propaganda.
What Gothard was selling was sort of this mythical idea of returning to a time in which things were better. Better for who? You know, it wasn't better for the women who were being abused by their husbands and it wasn't getting reported. It wasn't better for black people who didn't have the same rights as white people. It really was better for white Protestants, is what was meant by that.
This is a slanderous statement because Joshua Pease here is suggesting that because some of the teachings of IBLP correlated with some conservative ideas and things from the past, therefore Gothard is a white racist bigot who believes women should have no rights and black people should sit at the back of the bus. That is an obvious piece of propaganda, a complete fabrication, and an absolute absurdity to suggest that.
With Brown versus the Board of Education, 1954, the government starts insisting on the desegregation of schools. White evangelical Christians are saying we don't want our kids to be a part of the public school system anymore. A part of the homeschooling movement is in response to that. What made Gothard so effective is that he was able to realize that there was a way to dovetail all these things he's teaching that would also capture the momentum of people who are wanting to say, like, I want to take back control over their kids' education. Out of that, the Advanced Training Institute is born.
This clip was a little longer, but it was important that you see how Joshua Pease is weaving in the idea of racism and homeschooling together, and then saying, out of that, the Advanced Training Institute is born. So in other words, homeschool families who participate in IBLP, who participate in the ATI program, or even homeschoolers generally, are racist. And that's why they do not want their children in public education. That is the false narrative being created here. This is slandering homeschool families generally, but especially those who chose to use the ATI program, which of course includes the Duggar family.
There were 54 wisdom booklets. There were categories within the wisdom booklet, and so each week you would focus on one category.
At the end of the year, you start over.
That was an entire grade.
As you can see in this clip, it is suggested again that the wisdom booklets are used exclusively by some families and were supposed to be used to cover an entire grade level. Combine this false statement with the next one and see the picture that shiny, happy people producers are trying to create. This was the first in a series of false and misleading statements misrepresenting the ATI program.
In our wisdom booklet on page 23,
I deeply am sorrowful for anyone who only had this material as an education, because it is no such thing.
This narrative is being stated while showing the Duggar family to create the idea that the ATI materials are all that the Duggar children had for their education. ATI was not used as the only source of homeschool education materials by the Duggar family, and again, nor was it used by any family in that way that I have found. But this is the false narrative shiny happy people wanted you to believe, mostly because they want you to draw the conclusion that IBLP families were neglectful of their children's education and would only listen to IBLP teachings, and so had to only use IBLP materials to teach their children, because they were a cult.
The entire curriculum, of course, is based on the Sermon on the Mount. They would take a passage and they would purport to teach us everything that we needed to know academically just from that passage.
As I said earlier, ATI was not meant to be the sole source of academic material, so this is just a false statement.
Bill Gothard promised that his homeschool program would be the equivalent of a high school diploma with a pre-law degree and a pre-medical degree, like 2 bachelor's degrees.
This is a repeat of the slander that was in episode 1 that I showed in the first video in this series, but here it added the words high school diploma and 2 bachelor's degrees.
We teach our children that evolution is something that a lot of people are teaching, but yet it's totally unscientific.
you can see how the earth was formed, and with the flood and all of the things that science really backs up what Scripture says.
They were not being very well educated, and that it was largely by design, right? You're not going to teach the kids about dangerous ideas that exist outside the family's ideology.
Here, the interviewee suggests that the Duggars didn't teach their children about anything outside their own ideology. Yet right before that false statement, Jim Bob says they do teach their children that some people are taught evolution, meaning Darwinism, and that it isn't scientific. So they obviously did teach their children about other people's ideologies. And it is teaching logic to let them know what others believe and explain how it scientifically doesn't make sense. This particular segment in Shiny Happy People just shows how the producers assume most people watching will conclude that the Duggars are ignorant fools because they don't believe in Darwinism and teach their children that it doesn't make sense. But newsflash, it doesn't make sense. So
a lot of what they taught was just conjecture from Bill Gothard and from the other authors that he brought in to write his books. Poorly sourced, just complete, utter made-up nonsense.
Hands are composed of non-living atoms.
They used the hands are composed of non-living atoms as the example of Bill Gothard's conjecture and made-up nonsense, when a simple Google search shows this is not made-up nonsense at all, but an actual scientific fact, and obviously not conjecture from Bill Gothard. I guess the producers should have done a little bit of their own homework and maybe done a little bit of study in science. So far in episode 2, Shiny Happy People producers have promoted a known sensationalized false story from a lying woman as true, claimed that Bill Gothard was a dictator, and taught that fathers and pastors were to obey him, that families that started homeschooling and the entire ATI program began because they are white chauvinist bigots, that ATI families neglected to give their children a real education, that Gothard falsely claimed that by using the ATI program, participants were earning their high school diplomas and 2 bachelor's degrees, and the Duggars and other Christian homeschoolers don't allow their children to know what others think and do not teach them logic, therefore depriving them of the ability to understand the world around them. Next time, women's voices and their hairstyles, alleged abuse of the Duggar children, and IBLP grooming children for easy access by sexual predators. Thank you for watching, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe.